having known Jack for a while and having been sharing an office with him and seeing him beavering away on Colony for, what, 18 months now? Getting on for 2 years? Yeah, exactly. So Jack's been thinking about this whole subject matter for a long, long time. He wrote a really interesting blog piece today, so if you go on to colony.com.io, blog.colony.io, a great piece on his thoughts about how the DAO should operate as an investment fund and the kind of things to look out for. So I'd recommend that as a read. And without further ado, that's enough for me. I'll hand over to Jack to tell you more.
Thanks very much, Paul. Cheers. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to listen to me talk about this. So yeah, Colony, an Ethereum-based platform for decentralized autonomous organizations. I'm going to be gesturing like this to my lovely assistant Louis up there because we've got some technical difficulty and the clicker is broken. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind clicking, we will proceed to a string of nonsense, some acronyms that mean very little to anybody, least of all me. Presumably most people have heard of a DAO, particularly as of the last couple of weeks. Any feedback at all is welcome, so thank you. Vitalik and others have talked in detail about other terms like DO, DAC, DCO, DApps. None of these terms are very fit for purpose. I'm going to use the term DAO, even though there are some semantic differences between them as I go on. So if any of you are pretty hot on this, don't pick me up too much on those things. Next. So what is a DAO? So a DAO is essentially a piece of software which operates on a blockchain, which incentivizes people to participate in some joint activity financially. So importantly, it doesn't require there to be any central authority, and it doesn't require any of the participants to trust one another. So sounds like some fairly strong techno bullshit, but these are things that you're already actually quite familiar with. So, lovely assistant. Bitcoin is arguably the first. Probably don't need to explain that in any detail. But Augur essentially incentivizes people to make markets, to report on things that have happened without needing there to be anybody that's actually pushing that forward and not needing to trust anybody else's participation in it. All runs thanks to the sort of game theoretical underpinnings which inform the design of the system. So moving on a little bit from those kind of very special purpose DAOs which are very much designed and implemented by the developers for one specific aim, the DAO, designed by Slockit, launched a couple of weeks ago, and that's what we call a governance DAO. So it's designed to make very broad, sort of coarse-grained decisions, essentially board-level decisions that a company would make about, in the case of the DAO, how funds are going to be allocated. So it's something whereby you're purchasing a cryptographic token, and that token gives you certain voting rights. And the voting rights that you get within the DAO are proportionate to your stake. And in return for funding the various proposals that get made, there will be some kind of value proposition that is being offered, and if that value proposition is a revenue stream, then according to your ownership, you'll receive part of that. We move on. We then go on to what we would call a true DAO, which is what Colony is, what we're building, which is, if you can think of a governance DAO as being like an investment fund, then a true DAO is like a company. It does everything that you would expect a company to do without the needing to be any central point of control and any trust between any of the parties who participate. So you can conceivably have thousands of people working all over the world, not knowing one another, but contributing towards a common project. think of it as like open source, but with a business model. Actually, it doesn't have to be a business model. It could be a non-profit. And it provides a sort of fundamental structure that handles all of the necessary components of running an organization. So things like seniority. So although it's non-hierarchical, it doesn't mean that there is no difference. It's not egalitarian. It's people have greater or lesser degree of influence as a consequence of the merit that they are able to demonstrate by participation. And critically, you're able to actually earn ownership of an organization by doing work for it. So it's not only a case of purchasing your ownership in the organization as you would do with the DAO, but let's say you code a feature, you do some design work, whatever it may be, that you would ordinarily be doing for a client as a freelancer, say, that client can be an organization that you collectively own with other people. Yeah, slide. So the fundamental core of the system is designed to facilitate self-organization. So it does all of the sort of governance things that I mentioned before, but it also facilitates sort of management, which is without the management. That's actually crossed out, but it's very faded, you can't see it. So it handles the creation of tasks, the coordination of all the people around the tasks, quality control, the remuneration and arbitration of disputes. It has a reputation system, as I've mentioned. People's influence is an emergent consequence of the merit that they demonstrate. So the influence is a consequence of their ownership, the merit that they demonstrate, and how trustworthy they demonstrate themselves to be. Yeah, and not quite. Thank you. And whereas for a pure governance DAO, the voting is pretty straightforward. It's a proposal comes in, and then you need to reach a certain quorum in order to have a vote carry. In an organization, in a company, you don't really want to have a company-wide vote every time somebody needs to buy a new notebook. So what Colony does is to create a system which facilitates distributed authority within the organization, proportionate to the amount of influence that people have, the amount of trust that they've demonstrated, the amount of skill that they've demonstrated. But backs that up with a sort of system of staking, which makes it game theoretically secure so that people cannot exploit others. Now you can go, Louis. Thank you. So the structure of Colony is sort of twofold. There is an open source network. That is all of the smart contracts running on Ethereum. That will be completely open, free for anybody to be able to use. We would actually really love people to be building new kinds of decentralized autonomous organization front ends upon the framework that we're providing to developers. And yeah, it will be a modular toolkit for any kind of DAO. You can foresee people using it to create insurance applications, decentralized blogging platforms, all sorts of things. We can't imagine everything that people will do. We are also building a front-end client, which is like a DAO in a box. Our goal is that it will be as easy to start a DAO for anything you have in mind as it is to start a Facebook group, let's say, or a meetup group, something like that. And that will be absolutely free if you're running an open source project, much like GitHub. And there will be sort of various different paid options if you are sort of wanting to do something privately, or yeah, various different upgrades. Go. So how it works as an individual, you will go onto the client, you'll go into a colony, you'll find some work that you would like to do within an organization that you are interested in. And you will select to do some of those work. When you've done that work and it's been accepted, you will receive some reputation in that colony, in that DAO. As I mentioned, that reputation translates to your influence. So the more influence you have, the more your voice matters. So the more say you've got in what actually happens in that organization. Next. This is a truly terrible washout, but that's essentially what it looks like. Looks a bit like a Kanban board, a bit like Trello, available on web and mobile. And so it's very, very simple to use. If you've used anything like Asana, if you've used anything like Trello before, it'll be a doddle. In fact, it looks nicer than those things, if I do say so myself. Next. So coming later in the year, we will be distributing the ownership of the network, almost certainly. And that's also known as a token sale. And it won't, as token holders, there will actually be some requirements upon you. The root colony, which is the colony in which you'll own a stake, will provide services to the network. It will be there for building additional functionality, for providing arbitration services, and for a distributed Oracle service too. In return, it will collect fees from all of the bounties which are ever paid out. So every time a bounty is created on the network, a small percentage of that gets dispersed amongst all of the people who own tokens in the root network. Next. This is our team, the lovely Colin sitting on the table, on the chair down there. Myself and Dr. Alex and the rest of our engineering team, who are distributed all around the world, as obviously there must be, given what we're doing. Next. And our roadmap. So at the moment, we're building, actually, we're not calling it a minimum viable product, we're calling it a minimum lovable product. Has to be something that people find immediately delightful. So that's what we're aiming for. Our initial beachhead is people who are running things like digital agencies, people who are already a sort of smallish internal team who work with lots of external contractors, freelancers. We find, as a result of having done a recent beta intake form, that they are one of the key groups of people who are interested in being able to use Colony, because they want to be able to open up their organization a little bit without necessarily involving actually employing a load more people. They often can't justify employing far more people. They just want the right people at the right time, but they equally want those people to feel like they're an integral part of their organization. The network will be incrementally rolled out until it does support completely open and decentralized organizations. But we will be doing that in a very steady, stage-by-stage process, because it's absolutely imperative that it's secure and works nicely the whole way through. So, interesting. So, challenges. DAOs are not an easy thing. They're obviously completely, it's a very nascent concept. And there are immense challenges for us, for anybody else working on DAOs, particularly the Slockit organization, or the DAO, I should say. The biggest one really is security, regulation, and the SEC. The SEC are a very, very powerful organization, obviously controlling securities in the US. And it's quite unclear at the moment whether things like the DAO are issuing unregulated securities. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the coming months regarding that. The second is legacy, so real world essentially. How do DAOs interact with legacy organizations? Can a traditional company accept a business relationship with a DAO? What is the relationship between all of the people participating in a DAO? Initially, at first sight, it would appear that they're some kind of sort of general partnership, and in that case they are jointly and severally liable for all of the actions that each other take, which is, dreadful. If you imagine you've got somebody who is a nefarious actor in there, but is very, very good at keeping their privacy, everybody else could be responsible for the actions that they take under the eyes of the law. And then KYC. So is that something that needs to happen? If DAOs need to have their own legal status, if they need to be represented by a company that exists in the real world, how do we manage KYC on tokens which can change hands very, very rapidly. Next. So that's it apparently. So these are the ways that you can get in touch. You can join our community on Slack, which is pretty busy. Lots of interesting conversations happening on there around the future of work and DAOs, or just hit us up on the email. So thank you very much, and open some questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Down a bit. Do we have questions? At the back. I can't get there. Hold on. Sorry, here first.
Okay.
So if you've got to create trust within the network, how are you going to start when the colony actually launches, when nobody has any trust because they haven't done any work?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. It has to be sort of linearly dispersed through the network. So you have to start somewhere. Essentially, the person who starts a colony is the initial node of trust, and it all flows out from there. So for the root colony, we'll be the people that start it. We at least trust ourselves, even if nobody else trusts us. So we would hope that anybody else who's... So if you come and join the colony, you do some work, I then say, yes, that work was awesome. You will receive some reputation as a result, and that will gradually increase. The more work you do, the more reputation you'll get, the more influence you'll have. Eventually, you might have more than me. Who knows?
Thank you.
How to contribute? For example, is colony itself, is it already closed project? Do I need, in order to... So in order to build it, do I need to create my own DAO, or I can actually join colony?
So it's not live at the moment. It will eventually be possible. It will, of course, be open source in due course. That's most likely going to happen around September, where all the repos will be opened. Until then, we're kind of developing it as a core internal team.
And one more question.
Please.
So how to qualify as a public DAO in order to use your client? Is that free only for public DAO?
Yeah, I mean, it will just be contingent upon it being on the open public blockchain and your GitHub repos being open.
Does it need be non-profit to be public?
No, by no means. That's the beauty of it. This is creating a business model for open source.
And how you calculate influence?
How do we calculate influence?
Yes.
That's a very long question. The white paper will be forthcoming soon.
Thank you. So my question is about trust as well. So do you trust each other? You have the group of you. That was just my jokey question.
Okay. Absolutely not.
Right, okay. So you don't, so answering anyway, I won't even go into the details of them why we should trust you, but okay.
Sure.
So I was really interested in the distributed authority and how that worked. I work for an organization where we're thinking about delegation and how you bring people together to be trusted over a particular topic. So they seem very related. So how does that distributed authority work?
Okay. So typically in an organization, you have some level of discretionary spending authority, right? Is that, can I ask questions?
I'm not sure.
You don't
so
have
distribution, so you explain it as distributed authority.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
In your organization, do you have, as an individual, discretionary spending authority? Do you have some limit that you can spend up to?
You mean, do I have a budget?
No, I mean, well, yeah, I guess so. Do you have a personal amount that you're able to spend? If you need to go and buy a notepad, is that okay? If you need to go and, expense a private jet to Moscow, is that okay?
Probably not the Moscow thing.
No. Indeed.
Startups don't tend to go, well, I don't know.
Indeed. So essentially, according to the reputation that you build up, you'll have a differing level of discretionary spending authority. So you will be able to point your reputation at a particular task that's been proposed, and that will accrue within that task until it's funded. If many people can get involved and fund those tasks by also pointing their reputation at that for a period of time. So it gives the opportunity for people to just fund it, and it can go through as long as nobody objects. If somebody actually objects to it, then it calls for a vote, and then you have to actually make a group decision on it. If somebody further says, hang about, I think there's some shenanigans going on here, it will call for arbitrators to be brought in to try and assess what's going on.
So these arbitrators trusted?
No, they're not. It's also based on
Reputation as well.
staking an amount of money, essentially, on your ability to do this thing. If you prove to be correct, if you've made a spurious claim and people said this is absolute bullshit, this is nonsense, why have you wasted our time, then you will lose your money.
Okay.
I think that it will take a little while for me to walk through every different permutation of what kind of thing.
I don't know. A trade finance contract.
A trade finance contract.
I buy airplanes.
Okay. So trade finance contracts is something I know less than nothing about. So it might be tricky. If we can do something simple, like say you're within your organization and you decide that you need a new logo for whatever reason, you might find that there should be several designers within your colony. You create this task, we need a new logo. People will create the brief. Somebody will be assigned to be the project manager for that task. They will involve other people who are going to, let's say it's more than the logo, let's say it's the whole new identity. So you need the logo done, but you also need, you need some music that accompanies it, whatever. Those team of people will be different subcomponents of that task. They can each do that task. When you agree collectively that it's acceptable, then it will move on to the next stage of being voted on by other people as whether it's acceptable. If they agree that it's acceptable, then the funds are released to the people who've done the work. This will be easier to understand when you read the white paper.
Hi.
Hang about, there's a...
Yeah, we're taking questions in order.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that is a good example, yeah. So there's an organization called R-Loop. I don't know if anybody's heard of SpaceX's Hyperloop project. Well, R-Loop is a bunch of about 150 to 400 people, depending on the day, people who are working on this Hyperloop project. Now, whereas all of the other people who are participating in the Hyperloop project are essentially university teams, R-Loop stands for Reddit Loop. It's a bunch of nerds from all over the world who have met on Reddit. And they thought, hey, we've got the skills to be able to do this. We love SpaceX. We can do it. And they are, and they have been, and they've got to the final stages. So they find themselves in a particularly tricky position where they are able to distribute tasks between one another. They're able to manage the work that's going on, but they're not able to account for the work that's happened. They're not able to distribute value amongst all of the people who've participated. And that was fine when they were doing it for the love of the game, but now it's got further than they ever thought it was going to. And it's actually really serious, and they're really passionate about it. And it needs to become a company because they've got to really seriously think about commercializing what they're doing. But they have got no way of accounting for the value that people have added before or into the future. And more than that, they don't want to lose this sort of spirit of egalitarianism and meritocracy that got them where they are today. They don't want to install a top-down hierarchy. They want to continue the way that they're going because it's working really well. So they've reached out to us to use Colony to make that happen. And that's a perfect use case for Colony. That's a bit of a better answer, I think, to your question.
With respect to the briefs you mentioned before,
The briefs, yeah.
have you got any comments on the way that those can be codified within Colony? There's suggestions that the DAO does it through Solidity code, but you might have other methods.
So the way, I mean, a brief as it stands in Colony is, Louis, can we skip back a few slides? Do some clambering. Back to that one. There we go. So I appreciate that's pretty difficult to see. Essentially, you've got a big white space there. Brief goes there. It's not written in code. It's a plain text description of what needs to happen. That's collaboratively editable by the people who are participating in it.
And at a certain point, you certify that a proposal is finalised, and that's what's to be voted on and to adjudicated as,
exactly.
as done or not. Or?
Yeah, the people who are participating agree that it's kind of ready to roll. It's got a budget. It's been financed. At that point that somebody accepts doing the task, it's like frozen. There's no more changes possible to the brief.
I find it interesting, given that you're talking about a lot of tasks and some things that could be automatically recognised as having been done or what have you, if you'll include other mechanisms for automatable or automatically verifiable tasks and what have you.
What do you have in mind?
Well, it could be anything, but take for example something like Slockit, where you can tell if someone's opened the lock or not, and when they closed it again, and that kind of stuff. You could have tasks which are automated, and it could allow for a great deal of automation and
absolutely. It would be, of course, possible to create automatic completion of tasks when the completion of that task is something which can be objectively measured externally. In many cases, things are subjective. They need to have people look at it and say, is this actually good enough? Is this what we asked for? In that case, you need people to make that decision.
Is there a capacity for objective decision making as yet?
Not currently, but it's a good idea. Yeah. This is why open source is awesome, right?
Hey. Two-part question, both irrelevant, both not relevant. What if it's code? What if you expect a job to do that is code?
Yep.
It's never done. Because if someone certifies that it's done, and then you find a bug 6 months later, then what happens?
Well, then you raise an issue, right? And that issue needs to be resolved.
But they've already been paid at that point, so they could just
but then the issue needs
somewhere.
to be resolved. I mean, that's the nature of work, right? Is that sometimes you do a piece of work and it seems to be okay. That was okay at the time, but then an issue comes up later. It's nobody's fault. It was
And the
just
second
people can't be expected to do things perfectly.
second part is, are you going to put this as a proposal on the DAO? I'm sure you've been asked that a lot.
We have been asked that a lot. Who knows? I thought they were a bit strapped at the moment.
When you say X will happen, people agree.
Okay.
Is that based on like a simple poll, or is there sort of some kind of token voting system?
So the voting system is a consequence of people's reputation. So their reputation being a consequence of their ownership, their trust, and their merit. So ownership, straightforward. Merit, how good you demonstrate yourselves as being, by comparison to the subject, a subjective assessment of your activity over time. Trust being an objective measure of the things that you did. Did you actually do what you said you were going to do? Not necessarily how good it was.
So does the owner have sort of the power of setting the parameters, or is it down to the owner to say whether it's agreed or not agreed?
The owner is everybody.
Right. So is it programmatically set, the point at which the agreement line has been passed?
What agreement line?
Say, for instance, in this example, the brief, when would it have been agreed that the brief is finished and that's what you're working towards?
So the brief is finished at the point when somebody accepts the task. Somebody chimes up and says, okay, this is something I can do it for this price, I accept it, it's locked down.
Okay.
It could be changed at any point up to there.
Right, thanks.
Okay.
Hiya.
Hey.
Mamading Cisse. Question for you. The legal and regulatory challenges faced by DAOs, specifically in the UK jurisdiction.
Okay.
If you had the ear of, say, someone from Business and Information and Skills Department, what would you ask from them?
So we're speaking to them already. So what we've asked for, actually we haven't asked anything of them, other than to have an open line of communication, and they're very, very positive about it. Yeah, it's actually amazing how open the government are being to discussing all this stuff. They really seem to be keen to be at the forefront of this internationally. I'm sure there'll be some kind of announcements from the other people who are participating in these conversations in a couple of months. Yeah, quite possibly. Cool.
Because I'm here.
Hey.
Yeah, there's somebody who starts a colony, let's say, or a company, probably one or two people.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, are they able to choose the government's model they would like to use later on? Let's say either they would like to pay ordinary money for their contribution, or they would like to share, to distribute equity for work to be done? Or this model is really fixed currently in your implementation? No,
it's not really very fixed. We're trying to make this relatively unopinionated as much as we can. You will be able to decide whether people get paid in ownership or in money. Yeah, absolutely.
And what in that case, let's say, gaining of reputation plays, how it fits? If you pay with money and you never get the reputation raised for that people?
Pretty much, yeah. That's well, we've kind of taken the view, at least at the moment, that if somebody prefers to be paid in cash than in ownership, then probably they shouldn't receive a say in what goes on with that money, because they're not committing to a long-term relationship with the organization. It could be some mixture of the two, though. It's not black and white situation.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not a business person, so it might be a naive question, but if you have an organization, a DAO that's made up of 100 people from 100 different countries, how do you decide which countries' legal frameworks and tax systems you're bound to?
That is one of the beautiful things about it, right? Who knows? It's impossible. Nobody knows. Yeah, nobody knows. There is no legal framework for a DAO at the moment. There's some people that are working on some ideas around this, but there's absolutely nothing concrete yet. Yeah.
Sorry. On that, it's not a matter of legal who is responsible, but is the product actually working? If it is produced, would it be working in any of those countries? I think that's the important thing, based on the legal or framework or the different rules that regulators have in each one of those countries.
Which product are you referring to?
Any product. So I want to introduce something. I have a business requirement for anything, for a low-value payment system to be designed.
Mm-hmm.
And that has completely different ways because of being performed in each one of the countries because of tax reasons, because of union laws where the there are certain data that needs to be in different countries, so you have to have completely different codes. How, you just put in there, I want something to be done, globally.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do I know then that each one of the people that are coming in and say, yes, I can produce that in each one of the countries, is the business requirement that I have given too generic? Does it have to be specific? Or who has liability at the end of the day of what the actual product that's coming out at the end of the coding is going to be, and if it is going to be relevant for the clients and legally viable in each one of the countries, as opposed to just the legal liability that someone has in producing it.
This I think is what I was kind of driving at earlier on, is that this is one of the legal challenges that surrounds DAOs. They are organizations which exist on the blockchain, wherein you actually can't know who the participants are. You don't know what jurisdiction they're in. They may be obfuscating their jurisdiction through Tor. You don't actually even know that they're a person, so the personhood isn't a relevant argument actually anyway. They could be, as I think the IBM guy working on Adept said, the thing on the blockchain, no one knows you're a fridge. So who knows? And I certainly don't. I think, however, when it does come to people, that their responsibility is going to lie in their local jurisdiction, just as if they're a freelancer. Saying if I ask, it assumes that you are the person who's in control, and nobody is in control of a DAO. If you've got a different kind of internet organization, which is more hierarchical and which is under the banner of your company, then you presumably, as the company owner, as the employer of all of the participants, are the ones who would be liable and the ones who are responsible for ensuring that all of the participants are adhering to the regulations in their local jurisdictions.
So, clarification on a point that was asked over here. The influence is a combination of ownership, merit, and trust.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Can you speak a little bit more about that? So, who sets those? Are they determined by how much I trust you, and I choose the amount of trust, and it's an aggregate of everyone's trust, or what?
No, so you can think of trust as being rather similar to eBay's feedback mechanism. So, did you deliver this thing in a timely fashion? Did you deliver it at all? Was it as described?
Okay, and who sets the ratios?
What do you mean?
So, Rupert Murdoch owns an awful lot of the media, delivers on an awful lot of the media, is trusted by an awful lot of people, but is a bit of a dick.
Asshole?
and so, and so personally, I don't want to trust him with anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that count for? Is merit the most important thing? Is wealth the most important thing? Or is collective trust the most important thing?
So we would argue that wealth is not the most important thing. That's why there is the rest of the reputation system, because wealth.
So what's the ratio?
The ratio between those things, unset at the moment. We don't have an answer to that. We will do by the time the white paper comes out.
Okay, but wealth will be a non-gameable component.
It will be a non-gameable component, but also reputation is a non-gameable component, because reputation can't be gained by things which could be done with symbols. But also your reputation, you mentioned that the merits that people have, so and I suppose the trust to a certain extent as well. You don't trust the publications, let's say, that are created by Murdoch's corporation. You might trust other publications. So you don't need to trust everybody's reputation. You should only trust the reputation that occurs within the colony that you're part of, because reputation is not transferable. So your view in the colony that you participate in of what constitutes a high merit for somebody, of what constitutes trustworthy behavior for somebody, may be different from that of another. Okay.
Jack?
Hello.
Hi, I'm fairly new at this, and the way I understand it and see it, the colony is or your objective here, what you'll be talking about, is only about people doing work, actually guys doing some kind of collective job, if I can put it that way. What about the application for other groups that come together towards a common goal, like for instance commercial companies involved in, I'm personally involved in structured commodity finance, where your participants would be people that want to put up an organization that regulate the environment with the same goals, but not as employees, but as participants in a specific contractual relationship. Could that be used in that way?
Anything where it requires division of labor, yeah. So if you need to divide the efforts between a bunch of people, then it can be used for that. It doesn't have to be, you know, you're contracting somebody to design a logo or write a piece of code. It could be anything. It feels like it doesn't fully answer your question.
My question is not about the division of labor. My question is about specific contractual obligations that are managed by a decentralized organization.
Without knowing what those specific contractual obligations
No,
are?
the organization can decide that. In other words, your questions about people not being known or that might be a bit less relevant, because part of the participation would be that there's certain parameters, because it would be a standardized type of contract that people would participate. But a decentralized organization would be able to add new contracts, decide what type of involvement would be. That would be collective decision, almost like I can put it, a trading co-op, where the participants decide as part, not owners but participants, on how it works. There's not real ownership, but there's a collective goal in creating an environment that's trusted, almost like an exchange, but on a decentralized platform that the participants can use.
Okay, it's not immediately apparent to me that this would be something that you'd use our application for, but it might be something that you'd build on top of the framework, on top of the developer framework. Yeah, but it's not immediately apparent to me that it'd be right.
Hi,
Hello,
hi
Adam.
Jack.
How's it going?
Fine, thanks. Well, first of all, just a quick comment about the legal and regulatory thing. I mean, I think, to be honest, reaction of some of us is like, who cares? Borders are imaginary lines.
Right.
And frankly, if we're trying to create a new paradigm, we don't create a new paradigm by trying to fix everything that's wrong with the old paradigm, where governments are trying to enslave us with stupid, idiotic nonsense. We just throw it away and start again from new, and that's what DAOs are, and that's what DAOs accomplish. And actually, DAOs are a superior form of corporate organization to shareholder companies, which are basically 19th century constructs. So that I think is one way of looking at those things.
Very true.
The question I sort of have is, I mean, great concept, but it strikes me as a little bit of a walled garden. Maybe I don't get it, but it's not like Bitcoin and Ethereum in the way that sort of everyone can use it. Perhaps I've not got the right level as to whether it's a layer or a platform or what level we're at. Can you just, because I'm just a little bit worried that you go into a colony and you create one and then you're sort of locked into this construct. It's a bit like Apple, you know, you're in a walled garden, you have to use Apple, you have to use iTunes, you have to use, you know,
Actually,
again.
that couldn't be further from the truth.
Okay.
It's a completely open source network that anybody can participate in. We are building it such that we are building a client.
Right.
Other people can build their clients. They can build things which compete with our clients, and we would like for them to be able to be interoperable.
Right.
If you really want to, you could interact with the colony via the command line.
Right.
So absolutely
Okay.
not a walled garden.
So it's intended to be an open platform layer that everyone can play in, not a sort of top-down, rules-driven organizational structure or something.
No.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a framework that it provides structure and rigor for organizations which are essentially flat.
Right. Okay.
Self-organizing. You can't do that just with it being a complete, egalitarian mess.
Sure. Okay.
Any more?
Yeah, what's the big difference between Colony and the DAO, the other one?
The DAO?
Yeah.
The DAO's like, it's an investment fund.
Are they not producing the same kind of code that you're going to produce?
Not really, no. It's a fairly dramatically different proposition. The DAO is pretty much a decentralized investment fund, which is amazing. I'm big into the DAO. But what we're doing is very, very much more complicated. It's, as I mentioned, it's the difference between an investment fund where you can make decisions about things that you're going to finance, but actually the work that needs to be done to deliver those things is just sent away into sort of more centralized nodes on the edges. Colony facilitates fully decentralized companies. So money can go in, budgets can be dispersed, tasks can be funded, everybody can be paid by actually doing the granular work that needs to happen to make a company run.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay, one more question, Jez. Two more questions.
Hey.
Hey.
Will you have a marketplace of contractors that are offering services and have reputation so that companies can be matched up with people that can do work for them?
That's one of the number one requested features, actually. People want to be able to both find work and find people to do work.
You need to implement both ends of that, or there's nothing.
Absolutely, but strategically we're not going to do that right from the beginning. We don't want to do that right from the beginning. It's more like Slack to begin with, where it's individually siloed groups of people, and starting off with people like design agencies who have already got trusted networks of people that they have curated for capability and who are already used to working independently and to deadlines, importantly. Sorry? No, they aren't used to cryptocurrencies. Absolutely, that's correct. However, we're working to facilitate fiat payments as well, but they aren't used to cryptocurrencies, but I think that perception may change quickly when they know they've got some money that they need to withdraw. It's not actually very hard to sign up for Kraken and get money sent to your bank account.
Please recommend that one.
Recommend which one? Kraken. Oh, okay. You're in on Kraken. Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, have you finished?
Any more?
Yeah, one more. I've just got a quick one. Do you think it's going to be easy for people kind of to divide their own online persona or their personas within colonies and effectively get undue or achieve undue influence over time? You know, if they're kind of pitching for contracts and actually their online persona is 3 people and it's just them, and then if they're joining colonies, they can get undue influence in the future. Is that?
No.
Do you see that's being a problem or not?
No, I mean, Sybil attacks are one of the key things that you need to ward off right from the outset. And it's impossible within Colony to do that. You can only earn reputation as a result of doing things which couldn't be done by a bot, essentially. And your reputation scales linearly, so there's no benefit to doing the same work with 3 reputations in order. You just wouldn't get any more reputation. You're better off just doing it with 1. Equally, however, we don't want to force people to have to have just one account. They should be able to have more if they want to.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just one more question back. I'll get to you and then we're done. I'll take it.
Yes, a bit of a follow-on from that one, but how are you ensuring the security of the code and what kind of auditing practices do you have?
That is well above my technical pay grade. I make things look pretty. I think we'll have to drag our CTO in to answer that question. But you can by all means drop us an email and I can put you in touch with him, or join our Slack. You can badger him there.
Okay, last question.
Just coming back to your description of how the system ties together and how you've got the deliverers of the services and you've got the payments and the validation and you've got the trust. You basically described freelancer.com or people per hour. So for my untrained mind, I guess there's two things that are springing to mind. First of all, how are you going to differentiate yourself and make money? Or maybe that's not a priority for you right now. And as this scales, what is the additional benefit that doing it through your infrastructure is going to deliver to me as a, let's say, as a designer who's delivering this?
Okay. So, number one, it's definitely nothing like Upwork or People Per Hour or any of those things. That is a freelancer platform which facilitates a one-to-one relationship between client and supplier. Colony is something which facilitates a many-to-many relationship between people who are building an organization and sharing the ownership together online. Or, indeed, one company who is engaging with a whole bunch of different freelancers working on something collaboratively together and receiving remuneration as a consequence of their work, all tied together within one application. So it doesn't require you to go to People Per Hour and to, through your emails and manage those relationships manually. It automates the management of those organizations. What's the business model? Salient question. For the network has got a business model. Every time somebody completes a bounty, the network takes a fee. That fee is distributed amongst everybody who owns the network. What our business model as a company is in providing a front-end application, and bearing in mind that other people can create their own applications, there'll be open source ones hopefully as well, is just a straightforward SaaS model. It's free to use if you are doing something which is open source and you're paying your own gas costs, and it will be paid. It'll be a premium service if you want to have a private colony running on private chains. Was there another question?
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks. That's it? Okay, cool. Done?
Thank you, Jack. I'm sure you can grill Jack a bit more at the bar. Thank you.